So today I'm going to be doing an early wrap up for the month of August. At the end of the month, I'm not quite sure what day yet, I'm going to be moving, so all of this has to come down. No more pretty background, so if I disappear for a week, I'm getting my new house in order and I'm sorting it out. Luckily, we are staying in the same building, but I figured do my wrap up now. So I am ending this a little bit early, about a week early. So I have 15 books to talk about and then discussing 2 that I am currently reading. So the first book that I am currently reading is 100 Years of Solitude. I am on page 59, absolutely loving it. It is so weird thus far. I would love to explain what it's about, but I think I need to sink my teeth a little bit deeper. So I'll probably be speaking about this in my September wrap up once I can grasp a little bit better just what's going on in this book, but I will say I am enjoying it so far. The second book I'm currently in the middle of is the first book in the Wheel of Time series. I am on chapter 11, page 153. I am really enjoying it right now. It's kind of what I expected thus far. I do feel like this book, there is some heavy Tolkien inspiration. I do think I spoke about that already, but that's not to say I'm not enjoying it, but I am excited to see it progress past what is clearly his inspiration. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it right now. So now we're gonna get into what I was able to read this month. First, I have Crown of Midnight by Sarah J. Maas. Pardon how I'm speaking, by the way. I was having my lunch and I bit the side of my tongue, so I'm just trying to make it through a couple of videos. So Crown of Midnight by Sarah J. Maas, I really enjoyed it. It was a very quick read that I did over one of the weekends. It's book 2 of the series. I have book 3 currently waiting on my TBR. There's the novella, Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, and I'm moving on to, what is it? Heir of Darkness or something? I can't quite see across because I don't have my glasses nor my contacts in. So I thought this was a nice natural progression to a story, and I am looking forward to continuing the series right now. Actually, when we left her, she's going on a boat. She got on a boat and she's off somewhere. So we're gonna see where she lands and what she's up to. Next, we have the Fellowship of the Rings, book 1 in the Lord of the Rings series. Obviously, I think because I was reading Wheel of Time, I wound up picking this up, had a quick read, I really enjoyed it. Obviously, it's a reread and zero complaints. It delivered. It was amazing. Next, we have The Raven Boys, which is book 1 in the Raven cycle. I have mixed feelings about this because I do think this book is quite hyped in the book community. It did fall a bit short for me. A lot of people that I respect really talk it up. I don't know if maybe my expectations were too high. It wasn't so bad that I'm not interested to finish the series. However, I do think the pacing was a bit strained. The characters didn't necessarily fascinate me in the way I wanted to be fascinated. And yeah, it was fine. Honestly, it was fine. But I will say that is my initial reaction to book 1. I will be finishing the series, so I'll let you guys know as we go further along what I think. However, I wasn't impressed with the first book. Not super impressed. Next, we have Normal People by Sally Rooney. I did enjoy this. It's a contemporary fiction. I thought it was fine. I really enjoyed it while I was reading it. It is about a man and woman, well, a girl and boy, and the progression through high school, university, and as they exit their academic life. That's about the time frame you deal with, and the 2 characters naturally flowing in and out of each other's lives. And what I took away from it is a very toxic relationship, and as I was reading it, I found it really interesting in the subtleties and the depth that Sally Rooney was able to encompass with these 2 characters. I thought was great. However, I did find the plot and here's my problem. Actually, I'm gonna put this down. I don't like in a book when a lot of the problems could be solved by one clarifying question. And when the 2 characters meet and they're in high school, I think it makes sense that it's miscommunication, that allows them to drift apart. That makes sense to me. However, when they come back together during college, our heroine a little bit changed, our protagonist also changed by circumstance. They discuss past treatments of each other, and you would think this would be forward momentum for character growth. However, they wind up splitting apart initially in their college relationship because of one miscommunication, and it could have just been one clarifying question, and it didn't really... When you've been in a relationship for a while, it doesn't really make sense. If I thought my partner wanted to see other people or split up or vastly change the dynamic of our relationship, the first thing I would ask is a clarifying question. It was just very bizarre. It was very bizarre. If you want to skip ahead about 30 seconds, I'm just going to blurb what the exact scenario was, because I do think this could turn a lot of people off from the story. If you can move past it, that's fantastic, but I do think it is worth noting. So skip ahead about 30 seconds if you don't want a minor spoiler, because it only happens about a third of the way through the book. But very briefly, our two characters have reconciled in college. They're very happy, infatuated with each other. The relationship is going great, and due to financial circumstance, our male protagonist has to return home or stay with his girlfriend, which he does think is a viable option. So he breaches the topic by saying, I don't have enough money to remain on campus for the summer. And he leaves it at that. He doesn't ask, can he stay with her? And she says, oh, so you'll be going home? And he says, yes, let's see other people. And then they both break up, even though they don't want to break up. And it's honestly just the most absurd thing I've ever read in my life. Do you know, it would have taken one question for her to go, well, do you know, I have a spot on the couch. It just does not make sense. It doesn't make sense. If you've been in any relationship, probably past the age of 17, this is not a realistic way that a relationship will come to an end. And if it is, honestly, Gino, send me a message and we're going to sort you out, because it's absolutely silly. That's not even a miscommunication. It's just, it felt very false. It didn't really make sense. It didn't make sense. And nobody can convince me otherwise. It was just ridiculous. And I'm saying that like I'm a relationship coach. I'm not. But that was just silly. That was just, it was every rom-com when the two characters, you know, inevitably will end up together, but there's nothing actually wrong with them. So the writers just have to make up a reason they need to break up so they can come back together. That's exactly what it felt like. Next, we have The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I have already read The Golden Finch. I loved it. I read this. I equally loved it. I'm currently reading If We Were Villains, and I have a lot of thoughts on that, but I might actually just make that a separate video, or I'll discuss it in my September wrap-ups. But I will say this did not disappoint. I really enjoyed it. A lot of people liken If We Were Villains to The Secret History. I actually don't agree. I felt, as a dark academia, I think it did a really good job and it did what it was supposed to do. Whereas, just very briefly, I will say If We Were Villains is not hitting the mark for me. I think Donna Tartt did a very good job of exploring dark academia, the pitfalls and philosophies that you fall into, the pitfalls of morality when using philosophy. I just thought she did a really great job across the board, and I really liked the ending. It really did surprise me, and I just thought it was fascinating. Also, bar none, she does such a good job of doing character portraits. I was absolutely absorbed in every single character in A Secret History. I wanted to know more about everybody. I thought everybody was equally fascinating as our protagonist, even though we didn't spend as much time with everyone. Do you know it's that time when all the buses are gonna go by? Next, we have Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reed. This is a reread for me. I really enjoyed it. I wanted to give this book its due diligence in its reread. If you haven't read this, I really do suggest it. It is equal parts cringy and hilarious. Not cringy in like a rom-com kind of way, you shouldn't be reading this, but Kylie Reid does such a good job of portraying fake wokeness that it really does have you both cringing and laughing out loud, and also reflecting on your own allyship, and are you really benefiting the community that you say you want to help, or are you actually being a hindrance without your knowledge? Really do suggest it. It is such a great book. It is contemporary fiction, and we follow a woman who is accused or looked upon as maybe kidnapping a child when she is in fact the babysitter because she is Black and the child is white, and she is clearly mistreated and misrepresented. But every character in this is done so well when it comes to her love interest, when it comes to those that employ her, and even our main protagonist herself. It is just a really, really well done novel, and introspection and allyship with really whatever community you want to ally yourself with. I think she does a great job of breaking it down and making you reflect. Next, we have A Court of Thorn and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. This is a reread. I'm making my way through the series. The second book actually just came in. I ordered it. It's currently at my work, so I do have to go pick it up, but I'm making my way slowly through the series as a reread, so I can pick up the new book when it comes out, I believe in the new year. I think it comes out in January. Next we have, I don't know why my bookmark's still in there. Next we have The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. I loved this. I will say, as a general rule, I don't actually enjoy urban fantasy, but the way N.K. Jemisin handled this and tackled it, I thought it was done so well. I think she is a master at her craft of fantasy, and it really shows when a lot of the reason I don't enjoy urban fantasy is, from what I've experienced thus far, it lacks a certain amount of creativity and depth. A lot of it is, how can I integrate fantasy? How can I integrate the real world into my fanciful world? Whereas what I think N.K. Jemisin did really well is she integrated fantasy into our real world, and she did it masterfully. She did it beautifully. It didn't feel forced. It felt fun. It felt natural, and nobody's surprised because she is one of my favorite fantasy authors. She does such a great job, and because I enjoyed it so much, I'm actually rereading the 5th season. It's on my TBR cart right now, and I'm very excited to hop into it. Plus, I've seen a lot of booktubers I follow really just giving her due praise. A lot of people have reread the 5th season or are reading it for the first time, and it just made me feel like, do you know what? I need to reread it. I don't want to miss the boat. I don't want to, you know, I don't want to miss the fad. Even though I've already read it, I'll read it again. I loved it. Next, we have Into the Forest. So this is a read I have mixed feelings about. So I read this all in one afternoon. It's a quick read. It was bizarre. This takes place with 2 sisters and a father, basically in a dystopian time. I don't know that I would say it's the end of the world, but all electricity has ceased. People are having a hard time gathering and scavenging food and resources and gas, and we are placed into a family of 2 daughters and a father and how they are managing. Very, very, very early on, I'm trying to see if something's on the back or if it's a spoiler. No, it might be a spoiler, so I won't say it. But it's interesting, the dynamic the 2 ladies have with each other, with their father. I will say that there were a couple of scenes that I felt were kind of put in there just for shock value. I don't think it made much sense. I don't think it really added to the story nor the dynamic of the sisters, but I don't feel it shocked me. I felt it was very V.C. Andrews. It was shocking without a point. It was shocking just to be shocking. And I do think it took away from the story a little bit. I think it could have been a very interesting look into how we cope with our circumstances without the added shock value. Next we have Weather by Ginny Offill. I enjoyed this. It was fine. Do you know what? I don't know why I'm fibbing. As it was coming out of my mouth, I didn't enjoy this. I thought it was, I think I could summarize. Do you know what? I'm gonna just bring this up too. So this past weekend, I read 4 books in total, and 3 of them, I'm putting you in there too. 3 of them, Validate Me by Courtney Cox, Heidi, and Weather, not a fan. So this one I felt could be summarized by besides the point. I don't understand what our author was trying to do. It felt like, what do I think of this? I feel like the author certainly had a point. Whatever she was going for, God knows, it's not easy to be an author, so I don't want to take that away from anyone. But for me, it felt like it was beside the point. A dislikable protagonist, which I do fall into the camp that I don't have to like a protagonist to like a book, but this was just unbearable. It is one long stream of thought, kind of cut up in different situations. I read all of these reviews about how I'm supposed to love it, and I just didn't like it at all. I don't even want it on my shelf. That's too much. No, do you know what? It can be on my shelf. That was too much. So next I read Heidi. I passively enjoyed this. I don't think it was beside the point. I think it was just, if you could take a, I'm gonna put it down, but it is really pretty. If you could take a snapshot of yourself randomly between the ages of 5 to say 11, and it's just like you eating a popsicle, and then it's like you catching the bus for the first time, and then it's you turning in your first math quiz, and then it's you entering your first spelling bee. That was Heidi. It was snapshots of a young girl's life that ultimately I didn't feel there was a payoff. I felt that Heidi was a side character in her own story, and I was much more invested in the other characters that surrounded her. And maybe that was the point. Maybe I'm too dumb to understand. And I have an English teacher watching me that is shaking their head and saying, how do you review books for a living? And to that I say, I don't review books for a living. That's why this is not my day job. And I almost feel bad about reviewing this one. This is called Validate Me by Charlie Cox. I don't have a lot of appreciative words for this book, so I will just leave it at, I do think that this is a book for someone, but it wasn't a book for me. I do think a lot of it was quite centered around social media and what it means for you as an artist. It was a lot of Instagram poetry, which is fine. It's just not for me. And I do think there can be a lens put over social media, especially in an artistic way, that will bring depth. However, I don't think it was done. It all felt very surface level, and it felt very much like the thoughts that come into your head while you're waiting for those last 30 seconds for your laundry to come out of the dryer. That's what it felt like. There was no nuance to what Charlie Cox was exploring, and when there's no nuance and a lack of substance because of that, I found myself very disconnected with it, even though it really is geared towards people, I would say 30 years and younger. I would say mostly between the ages of 18 to 29. I do feel this is the age bracket that would enjoy this, but because of the lack of nuance, I just felt it was very shallow in its execution. On another note, I read The Dream House. I really enjoyed it. It was so beautifully done that there were times it was so hard-hitting and gorgeous that I actually had to put the book down and take a minute and read something else. It was absolutely amazing, and you know, it makes me emotional just to think about. She did such a good job. Good God. On that same vein, I read Mouse Part 2. It was amazing. I don't have much to say that I didn't say about the first book. I think Art Spielman did a fantastic job. This is someone who doesn't read graphic novels much. I don't know what I can say to critique the art style, how it read. I'm not well read enough that I feel comfortable critiquing that. However, I will say it was so accessible to someone who doesn't read graphic novels. The story was so hard-hitting and fantastic, and I felt something for every single character. I do think Art Spielman did the necessary task of taking a second to reflect on his current situation versus what his father and his mother had gone through, and putting that into perspective. And does he have the right to feel upset about the things he does? Does he have the right to feel annoyed with his dad with everything he went through? And it was so humane and beautiful. I think he did a really good job. So last, and I think what will be the most surprising, I read Sailor Moon. So I had an idea to do a video about reading manga for the first time, and I read this one. It took me far longer than I thought it would. I read a couple of short stories faster than I read this. And ultimately, I fell into the camp that I don't think a standalone video is right for my first delve into manga. I thought it would be a little more accessible than it was. A lot of getting to understand where to read first, reading from right to left, is already disorienting if you're not used to it. So I didn't struggle with that necessarily, but I struggled where to read each. I don't even know what they're called, like little scene cubes. I probably sound so stupid, and everyone who's watching this that reads manga is probably calling me an idiot, but I did find it really disorienting. I didn't know when pictures break out of the little box that they're in, or there's a big picture overlaying it with a speech bubble. I didn't know what to read first. A lot of the, not sound effects, but shouts or cries were still in Japanese, and I didn't know until the end that they actually have a little sort of index to explain what the little blurbs in Japanese mean and why do they leave it the way that they do. And after speaking to some of my coworkers, they say that is a known thing. If you read manga, there usually is an index in the back that you can look at, and it explains why they kept things a certain way and kept it true to its original language. I didn't not enjoy myself, but I thought it would be doing a disservice to those that read manga frequently to just come on video and say my first experience was a mess because I didn't find it accessible. But like, of course I didn't find it accessible because I don't read it much. So your first experience, especially when there's a translation and a difference, not just in culture, but in everything. There is an entire fandom and experience to be had with this type of book. And I just thought I didn't want to disrespect the communities that enjoy it, the community that enjoys it, and do a disservice to what they love by being ignorant and coming on camera and saying, oh, I struggled, because of course you struggle with the first thing you try. So I am going to try again, probably get some tips from people at my work that actually do read it, because I think it was a bit arrogant to go in blind and then feel blindsided, because of course I would. And I do think a lesson learned that I need to be a bit more, not open because I went in open-minded, but be a bit more communicative with those that do read it, so I don't have to feel like I'm drowning when I'm trying to experience something for the first time, because there is a community you can reach out to talk to, and I do know people that read it. So I do think I just I'm gonna keep going, and then once I feel like I have a footing with manga, then I will feel more comfortable giving my initial thoughts and reviews and series that I've tried and enjoyed. But until then, I just wanted to be as respectful as I could be and give it a real go. And I think that means more than the 1.5 mangas that I tried. So that's it for this video. In total, I read 15 books. I anticipate finishing those 2 this month while I move. So I'm hoping to get my number at 17, but Wheel of Time and 100 Years of Solitude will of course roll over into my September wrap-ups. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys in my next video.